Oh, we've reached the 1 week mark. Yeah. Thursday, it's Chiefs and Ravens. We're getting pumped. Biggest weekend of the year for fantasy drafts, so we're going to continue to get you ready for that. When we get to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll still help with draft stuff because I know people are drafting next week. We all have drafts early next week, but we'll start talking a little bit about week 1 as well. We welcome you to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Heath, a 1 week out prediction for week 1. Who do you got, Ravens or Chiefs?
I think that it's week 1, so probably going to be Ravens 35, Chiefs 31.
Okay, and then what's wrong with Patrick Mahomes? Are the Chiefs done? The dynasty's over.
The dynasty will be over. They'll probably lose to the Bengals in week 2 as well, and then win 17 straight.
Okay. So we got a lot of stuff today. This is fantasy smorgasbord. We're going to tell you the players that we keep drafting, players that are on the most rosters for Dave, Jamey, and Heath. Russell Wilson and Jacoby Brissett have been named as starters. Updates on Brandon Ayuk and Jamar Chase. Updates on Trent Williams. I'm going to try to get to players that we don't talk enough about. And if we have time at the end of the show, we will talk about our podcast league team, which is a 14 to give a little 14-team league advice, and our Superflex league that we did yesterday, a 12-team Superflex draft. Let's start with this. NFC ADP over the last 4 days. This is more than 80 drafts. Whose ADP is higher? You guys give me a quick answer and then tell me what it should be. Whose ADP is higher over the last 4 days on NFC? Jahmyr Gibbs or Drake London?
I'll say Gibbs.
Gibbs.
Yeah, it is Gibbs. I think last time we did this segment, it was like a week and a half ago or something. It was London. And I was flipping out. Like, how could this be? I think it was these two, but it is Jahmyr Gibbs. And he's back. He's like a 1-2 turn guy in wide receiver heavy leagues. So, okay. Cooper Kupp or Deebo Samuel? Whose ADP is higher?
Deebo.
Tyshun Samuel Sr.
You are incorrect.
It's Kupp.
Yeah. There we go. Who should be going first, Kupp or Samuel?
Samuel.
Deebo.
I don't think I've ever called him Samuel. Whose ADP is
Samuel?
Rashee Rice or Brandon Ayuk?
How many days?
Last 4 days. 81 drafts, I think.
Rice.
Yeah, I would say Rashee Rice.
Would you say Heath?
Ayuk.
Heath wins. Who should it be, Ayuk or Rice?
Rice.
Rice,
Jamey?
Rice, yes. Did he say Ayuk or Ayuk 2?
Is that a Fantasy Feud reference?
Yeah, you putz.
No, wrong. We'll revisit that in a moment.
You are putz.
It's
not wrong. That's correct. Now, again, you saying wrong when we are correct.
For what happened yesterday?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I feel strong conviction that I'm in the right. Okay. Whose ADP is higher last 4 days? Mark Andrews or Dalton Kincaid?
Haven't you ever seen a Russian judge at a Russian Olympics?
Come on. Mark Andrews or Dalton Kincaid?
Kincaid.
When has there been a Russian Olympics?
Like 8 years ago.
Kincaid?
Who was it? Kincaid and who?
Mark Andrews.
Andrews.
I don't think you'd be asking that if it was Andrews.
Back to back. It's Kincaid. Strange. Is there a justification for that, guys?
Car accident, I guess, for Andrews. People concerned that he's hurt.
Maybe like people waking up to the fact that there's not any good wide receivers on the Bills and thinking Dalton Kincaid might just see 140 targets.
Yeah, who gets more targets, Andrews or Kincaid?
Kincaid.
Okay, then I'd say it's justifiable. We don't have it that way, right? We all have Andrews ahead of Kincaid.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
They're very close for me, but yes.
Who's going first in the last 4 days? Christian Watson or Keenan Allen?
Watson.
I don't think you'd be asking this if it were Allen. So
Dave, get out of your own head.
Yeah.
Fine, I'm not answering.
Dave's right. It is Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen is going ahead of Christian Watson. Who would you guys take?
Watson.
Zamir White or Javonte Williams? Who's going ahead in the last 4 days?
I'm going to use the same strategy I've been using all along. You
You're
wouldn't ask that if it were Zamir, so I'll say Javonte.
Jamey says Zamir White's going first. Dave says Javonte. Heath, what do you say?
Javonte.
It is Zamir White. Jamey for the win. Who should go first, Zamir White or Javonte Williams?
Zamir White.
Javonte.
Javante, how many times have the Olympics been in Russia during Dave's life?
In Russia? Well, there was the 1 year, Sochi, right?
Right.
Is that how you pronounce it, or did I botch that?
Sushi.
Sushi?
No, I think it's Sochi. I think you're
Yeah,
right.
it's Sochi.
Of course, it's
Now I know what I want for lunch.
It was also in
Any
1980.
other times, Heath? Go ahead.
1980.
Was I born in 1980?
Yes.
Okay. So twice in my life.
You looked exactly the same in 1980, probably, don't you?
I don't think it was. No, wait. 1980 was
Lake
winter.
Placid was the winter.
Yeah, was.
Summer was in Moscow.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Jordan Love or Jaden Daniels? Who was being drafted first? Jordan Love or Jaden Daniels?
Oh, Jordan Love.
That's Love.
It's Love.
Love. It is Love. And who would you guys take first?
Daniels.
Love.
Derrick Henry or Isaiah Pacheco? Who's going first?
Ooh, Pacheco.
Pacheco.
I will say Pacheco as well.
3 wrong answers. Derrick Henry is going first. Who should go first? Is this Samaje Perine? Oh no. Who should go first? Pacheco or Henry?
Pacheco.
I still have Pacheco 2 spots higher than Henry.
All right, we do have to talk about that though. Samaje Perine going to the Kansas City Chiefs. What might it mean for Isaiah Pacheco? Few things I want to promote real quick. Jamey's doing a mock draft Friday at noon Eastern. That's tomorrow, noon Eastern. If you want in, this is one of the last things you can get on tinyurl.com/draftathon2024 to support St. Jude. So we have some spots left. It's I think $50. All goes to St. Jude. The draftathon has been a huge success the whole month. We are now over about $105,000. Unbelievable. Yeah. We had over $30,000 in donations yesterday. So big thanks to several people who donated $10K, including Todd Rones, who was on the episode or the Draftathon show yesterday. Big thanks to Matt Ryan, who donated $1,000 yesterday. If you still want to donate to St. Jude, tinyurl.com/draftathon2024. This is our second straight year, over $100,000 for St. Jude, and you're all a big part of it. So thank you so much for that. Mailbag. We got the Saturday mailbag. We usually record it Friday afternoon. We're recording it tonight, Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Me, Jamey, and Dan. So if you want to watch that live, 9 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/fantasyfootball today.
Is that because Dan's taking another day off tomorrow?
No, it's actually because I wanted to do kind of a mini staycation with my family, but
oh, you're the one.
I'm no longer doing that. But Dan is not supposed to work on Fridays, so he always does that for us anyway. So I figured we'd give him the Friday off. And regular season programming, we've got episodes. Monday is Beyond the Box Score. Tuesday, Waiver Wire. Wednesday is more or less a trade show, buy low, sell high, that kind of stuff, and any other things that we want to discuss. Thursday, starter sit for the AFC games. Friday, starter sit for the NFC games. You will not find more in-depth start sit advice than what you're going to get on this show. Saturday is mailbag. We recorded on Friday. Sunday night, we recap the action. Sunday morning, we're going to give you like an 8-minute episode with starts and sits based on the latest injury news. So your league is not done after your draft. Stick with fantasy football today. We've got you covered. Let's go to the news and notes here. Russell Wilson is Pittsburgh's starting quarterback, and he was per game last year 14th in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues, 13th in 6-point. Russell Wilson basically scored the same amount of fantasy points per game as Jared Goff. Does anyone think he has a better than 50% chance of finishing as a top 15 quarterback, being fantasy relevant most of the season? Russell Wilson.
On a per game basis, maybe, but at some point he's going to get benched and be able to play.
That's the part I disagree with. Better than 50% is wrong. I think we can't say, because if we thought that, we would have him ranked as a top 15 quarterback. But I think better than is being accounted for by his ADP. And the reason I think that he's not going to get benched is Mike Tomlin doesn't have losing seasons. I don't. There's not going to be a time where we're going to go to the young guy because we're out of it.
He's benched.
Well, haven't they struggled each of the last 2 years and had strong finishes? And
that's true.
In the case of last year, he did replace his quarterback because there was struggles. So I typically lean toward what Heath is saying, that it would have to be, I think, a disaster for Russ to get benched. But
Man.
I was
What a
actually, because I did the fantasy segment for HQ on the news yesterday, and I was listening to Bryant McFadden and Pete Prisco discussing this. And McFadden is a former Steeler who played for Mike Tomlin, and Pete said Fields was going to play because I think correct me if I'm wrong, their bye is week 8 or 9, something like that.
It is week 9.
Week 9. So Pete's point was, if they're sub 500 come the bye week, that Fields is going to play to close the season. So I think, and that makes sense, and McFadden's point was, if he gets hurt is really the only way Russell will come out, because of exactly what he said. He's obviously a Tomlin guy. So I think you just have to understand that if you're taking Russell Wilson in a super flex or 2 quarterback league, because nobody's drafting him in a 1 quarterback league, you may pick him up at some point early in the season. Just understand that you probably should, dip your toe into the 3rd quarterback pool very quickly to get yourself somebody else. And it might not be a bad idea. And Thomas can probably speak to this, of trying to get both those guys. Thomas was sniped by Dan, I believe, trying to get Fields after Wilson, or Wilson.
No, he took Wilson. He took Fields ahead of Wilson.
And then Dan took Wilson.
I guess so.
This is the strangest thing I've ever seen. I was like, let's go look at the Steelers schedule to see what their record might be. They don't play a division game before their bye.
Yeah.
The Falcons, the Broncos, the Chargers, the Colts, the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Jets, and the Giants.
All their division games start in week 11.
They might be 6-2.
Let's finish up here with it. Okay, so we've said our piece on that. Someone asked in the chat, did Adam get hit in the side of the head with a softball? Because I have a big line in the side of my head, because I was told to do it yesterday. I shaved this line in the side of my head for a $5,000 donation to St. Jude. So you can get off my back about that now. But
$5,000 to shave a line in your head, or $5,000 to shave your head?
I don't know. I shaved the line in my head. We got a $5,000 donation. That's all I know. Jacoby Brissett is New England's starting quarterback. He actually was solid in 2022 with Cleveland. Not really for fantasy, but he is I don't know. Who's more likely to see the field first as a starter, Justin Fields or Drake May?
Drake May.
Okay. Brock Bowers has a foot injury, but Antonio Pierce, he's had a foot injury, but Antonio Pierce expects Brock Bowers, Raiders rookie tight end, to be ready for week 1. Let's talk about the Niners and the Bengals. Brandon Ayuk has been medically cleared, but he's still not practicing. So that means they can fine him now. He can't claim injury. He still did not practice yesterday. And Mike Garafolo of NFL Network said they're not close. The Niners are not close to an agreement with left tackle Trent Williams. It seemed like their comments indicated I think they said they were having good discussions with left tackle Trent Williams. But at this point, Heath, Brandon Ayuk, I think we said we'd take Rice ahead of him, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I woke up this morning feeling more nervous about these situations than I have. It seems like maybe it's just gamesmanship, but it does seems like both situations have escalated a little bit, with the 49ers comments that he's going to have to play at some point, and Chase showing up for one day, the Bengals saying we expect him at practice now, and then he doesn't. He shows up the next day 15 minutes late in street clothes. I'm back to. I've moved Jamar Chase back down to the 9th pick overall, and I've moved Brandon Ayuk to the end of round 4.
I did the exact same thing with Ayuk. He's late round 4 at best. That situation, to me, that comment about he's got to play at some point kind of tells me that they're resigned to the fact that they're not trading him. They want to keep him, maybe by choice or by force. Maybe they didn't get an offer that they liked.
Oh, there might be a new team in the mix.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the Browns just opened up a hell of a lot of salary cap space.
They did.
Yeah, they restructured Deshaun Watson's contract and opened millions.
Deshaun Watson got a $44 million check today. Imagine that.
Wow. So maybe he doesn't need to shave a line on his head or anything like that.
No.
I think he has probably people that do everything for him.
How much money has he made on a per start basis in Cleveland?
I think I heard this morning that he has started
It's 12.
one
right?
more game than he's been suspended since the suspension.
All right, but let's move on here. So
That's
just
right. If it's 12, because he was suspended for 11 games, I think.
Heath took.
By the way, I'm okay with Chase. Let's see if it continues through the weekend that he doesn't practice. But he's been with them. He started to practice. He's got 2 years left on his deal, so he doesn't have as much leverage as Ayuk would have.
Here's the thing. If you're picking in the first round and you don't have picks 1, 2, or 3, because I think it's safe to say Lamb is in the top 3 again. If you don't have picks 1, 2, or 3, or you don't want to take one of the running backs, so let's just say you're past pick 5, right? There's concerns with Jefferson. There's concerns with Chase. Just take St. Brown. It's very easy.
Yep.
If that's the way you want to go.
Yeah, I have so much Jamar Chase. I wish I had a little more Amon-Ra.
I just want to I picture Heath always like waking up like a happy person. Like I wake up grumpy because I never sleep enough. And like was it like wake up and like 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 the light bulb over his head?
Maybe he had a dream about it.
You can Chase.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he had his non-cereal breakfast, his sausage and cheese. And
I had some delicious. My wife made these gluten-free muffins out of eggs and sausage, and they were delicious.
A muffin made of egg and sausage.
Yeah,
I need the rest.
Cannot wait for basketball season to start, and Heath just to run the bleep out of my son.
All right, listen, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FANTASY and get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. We will be right back on Fantasy Football Today with more news items. We'll talk about Samaje Perine, D'Onta Foreman, and more, and then tell you the players that Dave, Jamey, and Heath just keep on drafting. We'll be right back.
Can I get a spot real quick?
Yeah, sure, man. Hey, wait a minute. You're Dave Richard from FFT.
Yeah.
Huh. Hey, I snagged Alvin Kamara in the 4th round. What do you think?
Is it PPR?
Yeah, full point.
We had some really great promos. I hope
that was fantastic.
I was able to see some on Twitter. If you didn't see it on YouTube, you can see it on Twitter. Follow the Fantasy Football Today.
Major flashbacks to when I worked out at Diamond Dallas Page's house with Jake the Snake.
Ooh, name dropper.
Yeah. That's just, I had never seen that before until right now, but it reminds me of that day just because, gosh, I look like a dork. Glasses really and the bandana, but it's legitimately how I
shirt tucked in
to the gym. What
was your shirt tucked in?
Yeah, I don't think you saw belly. I mean, you saw belly, but I don't think you saw skin of belly.
I'm gonna give you 3 running back signings. We talked about.
You're making me feel self-conscious about my weight.
No, your shirt was tucked in.
I'm never eating again, man.
Your shirt was tucked in the workout. That's very formal. All right, I'm going to give you 3 running back signings. Tell me which one matters the most. Dalvin. I know we talked about Dalvin Cook yesterday, but we'll do it again. Dalvin signing Dallas Cook. Cleveland re-signing D'Onta Foreman. He's back after a brief goodbye. And the Chiefs signing Samaje Perine. Heath, which one matters the most?
I think it's likely that there is no answer because they don't matter. But I'll say I did not move anybody in the rankings because of them. But I'll say potentially Dalvin Cook matters the most.
Does anyone get concerned about Pacheco? Because it was really when McKinnon got hurt last year that Pacheco's season took off. He averaged something like 5 targets per game. He averaged 5 targets per game in 4 regular season games without Jerick McKinnon, which was basically double the amount of targets he was averaging with Jerick McKinnon. So they bring in Perine, an experienced third down guy. Is anybody downgrading Pacheco at all?
No, but I think Perine's definitely the number 2 running back there in Kansas City and worth a late round pick.
I'm passing on any other Chiefs running backs.
That's probably the smart play to do. Yes, but if you are looking at who can have an impact, I don't think this is good for Carson Steele. I don't think this is good for the status of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, you've seen this with Andy Reid in Kansas City before, trying to be. He's been successful with it with McKinnon, bringing a guy who can play on passing downs and getting amazing production at times. And they've tried it with veteran guys before. I mean, they tried to resurrect Le'Veon Bell at one point. So he's got something. I was reading a couple stories last night. Like this was the smartest move of the non-factor moves that they've done this offseason.
I look at very, very much like the Juju move is I don't think either one of them matter if everyone stays healthy, but they're great team depth moves. And maybe if somebody gets hurt, they will matter.
Coaches trust them because they're experienced. They know what they're doing out there. It's a lot different than an undrafted rookie running back who's never been in a situation before where there are passing downs back. But I do think that if something were to happen to Pacheco, we'd see a lot more of Carson Steele and not a lot more of Samaje Perine.
And Pacheco, he became the feature back in week 10 of the 2022 season, okay, a season and a half ago. Over his next 22 games, Pacheco scored more than 16.2 PPR fantasy points once. He always had this ceiling. 22 games, one time more than 16.2 PPR fantasy points. And then he eclipsed that number in 5 of his last 8 games, including the postseason last year. And in 3 of the last 4 regular season games, Pacheco scored more than 21 fantasy points. So he was this like very solid, but definitely a number 2 running back for 22 games. And then for 8 games, he was unbelievable. So I'll just ask you, I guess, to finish off, should Isaiah Pacheco be a top 20 pick in fantasy drafts?
Easily.
I would take him then.
Definitely a 9.5. Very, very close and full.
All right. Washington signed Noah Brown. That's pretty interesting.
So last 2 seasons, he's had an ADOT over 10 yards, and he's lined up all over the place. He's definitely spent time in the slot. He's worked out wide. He's even been in motion before. So he's got a speed element to his game. Last year, 6.8 yards after catch per reception in Houston. And so it's kind of sad when your team adds Noah Brown and he might be the second best receiver on your team immediately. But that might be what's going on in Washington. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had an opportunity to play sooner than later. Dart throw in the deepest of full PPR leagues.
Man, he had an ADOT over 10 and he averaged 6.2 yards after the catch per reception, whereas 6.8, unbelievable. Drake London averaged 2.7 yards after the catch per reception. Yeah. Okay, Drake London or Noah Brown? Let's talk about the players that we keep drafting.
Drake London.
Wait, you know what? I'm sorry. Just real quick. If you were going to gamble on a number 2 receiver for Washington, obviously in a deeper league, would it be Noah Brown or Jamey Brown?
It would be Zach Ertz.
It would be Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Okay. It'd be Pierre Garçon for me. Players we keep drafting. You guys gave me huge lists of names. And I just want to point out one name that's not on any of your lists is Devon Achane, 26th overall in CBS ADP. Jamey, when would you take Devon Achane?
Middle of round 3.
Okay. That works for me.
And I did take him once so far. I only gave you the players that I drafted 3 or more times.
Fair enough. That was out of 15 leagues as of Monday. I know Jamey's got more leagues since then. But yeah.
28 since then.
Double digit.
And I only gave you the players I drafted in 4 or more.
Okay, good. Double digit drafts for all of these guys who are players that they've drafted at least 3 times, let's say. Dave, 3 quarterbacks for you. Jordan Love, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy.
And I don't feel great about Purdy right now just because of Brandon Ayuk and his situation there. But if I'm the type of drafter that wants to wait on quarterback and feel like a steal, I'm probably not going to get a lot of Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, you know, the top 4 names. And so the ones that I end up going with are the ones that are available in the middle rounds. And that's usually been Love and Dak. And I feel a lot better about Dak now that CeeDee Lamb is there. And I like his floor. It's actually a pretty high floor. I think it's around 24 fantasy points per game. That's what he had last year. That's what he had 2 years before last year. I guess that would be 3 years ago. And the year in between, once he was healthy, he was at 24 fantasy points per game. So there seems to be a number that fantasy managers can feel good about with Dak Prescott. I don't mind waiting around for him and getting him at a good value.
2 years before last year is a very funny way to say 3 years ago. Josh Jacobs and Ken Walker in round 3 for you. You take them and Chase.
And now I think I got to take him in round 2, especially Jacobs.
I don't think
all the news that's coming out and the demand for Jacobs, and it's somebody that I really like.
But not Walker in round 2, right?
And unless there's a massive running back run, or if it's non-PPR, I would be in on Walker. I do have Walker ahead of Achane in my rankings.
Okay, and then Chase Brown and Chuba Hubbard late for Dave. So let's go to some wide receivers. Yeah.
No, I was just going to take a screenshot of this list because I am trying. We have our auction draft in about 3 hours, and I wanted to know who to nominate. So just getting a list. I'll get Jamey.
Listen, man, I love these guys, but I'm not going to overpay for them in an auction.
Well, Heath, if you subscribe to the theory of nominating players that you don't want, and you look at the players that Dave keeps drafting, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Josh Palmer, Metcalf, Pickens, Ridley, McLaurin, Godwin, Reed, Palmer. Who would you nominate? Because you don't want him. You want Dave to bid on him.
Yeah, I would probably nominate Terry McLaurin. Would be the guy. No, I'd just nominate him for $1 and let you guys bid him up. Like I Pickens on that list, and probably Ridley, because I was really higher on him earlier in the summer, and then it just turns out we start drafting real teams, and I've only got him like once. But Pickens and Ridley are probably the two guys that this last week of drafting I'm going to make sure I get a little bit more of.
Yes, you're going to buy the dip, right?
If there's a dip, sure.
I think with Pickens there is.
I don't think anymore as we get away from the trade.
I don't know. He's always been one of the guys I've highlighted as one of those round 5 guys that.
But he's fallen to round 6.
Okay, yeah, that's insane. But round, I mean, I take Pickens in round 4. Sometimes I consider taking him in round 3. Sometimes I don't think Ayuk's going there. I guess, but I guess you gotta at least accept there's a possibility of that. But let's say you knew for a fact that Brandon Ayuk were not going to be on the Steelers. When would you take Pickens?
Round 4.
Right where I have him right now.
For a fact, I might go round 3.
All right,
I've got him as a round 4 guy, late round 4.
And then you got this range of 4 receivers: Ridley, McLaurin, Godwin, Reed. So they're all round 6 picks, basically. So that's an area you're going to live in.
Reed
absolutely would love to get at least one of those guys. I'm fine with any one of them being a number 2 receiver.
Where's Jordan? Where's Jaden Reed going?
Reed around 6 is a bust.
Yeah, I don't mind him in round 6, but when I get him in round 7, I'm thrilled.
Reed's still going ahead of Watson is a mistake.
I disagree. I think that he's going to end up being the better pick over the course of the season.
He's a round 7 pick. Sorry, so these are round 6.
The only way he's better is if Watson's hurt.
All right. I don't think Jaden Reed is your guy.
I kind of know the track record of Christian Watson.
Very true.
Yeah.
Okay, and then yeah, you know what, guys? Give me a thought on Metcalf. He's one of the players I was going to have in our players we don't talk enough about segment. You're going to have to decide between Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Malik Neighbors. Who else is going around there? Ayuk, Jalen Waddle is going around there. I know I think we all like him better than Metcalf. I don't know about Dave. But I'll give you the first word, Dave, since you keep drafting DK Metcalf.
I keep drafting DK Metcalf because I think his role is going to be a little bit different this year. We've seen him as a downfield perimeter receiver in Seattle, and I think they're just going to be more creative overall offensively, and that'll include Metcalf. He has been lining up in the slot a little bit more. He might get some shorter targets this year, so maybe the ADOT comes down, and that improves the efficiency. And he's been, what is it, Adam? It's been every year of his career, he's been top 5 in end zone targets.
I think actually top 4, but maybe top 5 in end zone targets.
I don't think that goes away. I think that he could have a setup for a massive year where he's getting more targets per game, shorter throws in general, making plays after the catch. We know he's fast and we know he's strong, so he could be put in positions to just make much, much better plays. I am bullish on DK Metcalf. He's a round 3 pick for me. And I have struggled with keeping him behind Malik Neighbors. And I know that sounds a little silly. A lot of people, look, ADP will tell you to take Metcalf ahead of Neighbors. But I think that they both have huge upside based on athletic traits and target volume.
And Metcalf is a guy, I have him in round 3 also. I also have 0 DK Metcalf teams out of 15. I don't have him in Dynasty out of 9 Dynasty managed rosters. And so I might have to try to find. The problem is I just draft Jalen Waddle and Mike Evans instead, and now Rashee Rice.
Metcalf, last 3 seasons, he has been in full PPR. He has been wide receiver 23 per game, wide receiver 22 per game, and wide receiver 23 per game. And he's being drafted a little bit ahead of that. And by the way, Dave, he and Neighbors are back-to-back in NFC ADP over the last 4 days.
Okay. I don't believe that's the case on CBS.
No, it's not even close. But that,
Right.
but, you know, Neighbors is climbing up.
Neighbors is at 60.2.
Yeah.
Oh, man. If you guys get him at 60.2 in your drafts, I think you are crushing it.
Even Heath would do that. Jake Ferguson is a tight end that you draft a lot, and we can finish with that.
When I whiff on tight ends, and meaning I don't get my hands on like the first 5 or 6 of them. I'm going to wait a little bit and get Ferguson. I don't like him in round 7. I've seen him go in round 7 in some of our drafts. I like him better in round 8. And if I miss on him, Njoku is the backup to that. So Ferguson and then Njoku are the settle for tight ends. It is not a strategy to just wait for Ferguson and Njoku. I think you should be on the lookout for a better tight end on draft day. But if you've got to reach for them over the course of your draft, I wouldn't do it. And in which case, you just don't have a tight end. It's round 8. Ferguson's there. Round 9, Njoku's there. Take one of those guys.
Let's take a look at Jamey's most drafted players. At quarterback, Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, and Matthew Stafford is a name I wasn't expecting to see here. Richardson, Kyler, and Stafford, Jamey.
I mean, Richardson obviously is shooting for the upside. Murray, I think, is not far behind. They're both 5 and 6 in my rankings. So love the upside for both of these guys, and I think both can challenge to be top 3 quarterbacks depending on an injury or something just fantastic happening for them. But the rushing ability is what you're banking on with those 2 guys. For Stafford, it's mostly 2 QB and Superflex leagues that I've been taking him, but he cracked the list of the top 3 of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But not a bad fallback option, if you're taking a second quarterback.
Matthew Stafford was a stud down the stretch last year. I don't have time to pull up the numbers, but he was great. Running back. Okay, you've got a lot of Bucky Irving, your most rostered running back. That's funny.
He is, yeah.
Do you think that he's just a handcuff, or do you think he could take significant work from Rachaad? Could he make Rachaad White a bust?
No. When you said the word significant, the answer was going to be no for me. No, he'll have work. Will he have significant work? No. 5 touches maybe per game if White is healthy. But if White goes down, I mean, we saw in the preseason, he looked good, and that was with backups. And so we'll see how he does with backups and against backups. But I do think that his skill set fits this offense. I think that he's will prove to be a good pass catcher out of the backfield based on what he did in Oregon. And, the thing that concerns me is he's small, so will he be a featured guy? But looking at the depth on their roster, it feels as if they'll trust him. So more of a handcuff than anything else, but, lottery ticket type of guy.
Jamey, just like Dave, also has Ken Walker and Chase Brown in a lot of leagues. Now you have Jalen Warren and Rico Dowdle on this list, Zach Charbonnet and Tyrone Tracy. These guys are in 4 of your leagues as of Monday. Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle, Zach Charbonnet, Tyrone Tracy. Warren and Dowdle I could see going pretty close to each other. Who do you prefer?
Warren and Dowdle?
Yeah.
Oh, Warren's going to go ahead of Dowdle now.
Yeah. But close. Why? Because of the Dalvin Cook thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to scare people off. And look, Warren getting healthy also.
Yeah. So
Warren is falling because of the red tag next to his name, simply put.
And he might play week 1. He said he will, but he said he would have played in the preseason if it had been a regular season game. Charbonnet and Tracy, just pure handcuffs, you think, or have a roll? Okay. Brian Robinson.
Charbonnet just become free.
Yeah, right.
It's so easy to draft him.
Brian Robinson is someone that way back in the beginning of this process you were talking about as someone you liked, and you have a lot of Brian Robinson.
And continue to take more of him. It's thought all along he'd be the best running back for the Commanders, and it's proving like that's going to be the case based on what the expected touches will be. We'll see what happens in the regular season, but should lead them in carries, should lead them in goal line work. I think the passing work is a slight edge to Eckler as opposed to a huge edge to Eckler. And so we'll just see how that goes in that part of the game. But I think Brian Robinson is in line for a career season.
And Tajay Spears and Kamani Vidal are on your list.
Spears is an easy one, similar to Warren, just somebody that you could take as even a number 2 running back in a hero RB build or certainly a 0 RB build. We, I think, have all sort of slanted toward Tony Pollard, understandably so, because he's had a good preseason and seems to have the better opportunity to be the lead running back there. But we heard all offseason, they're going to split touches. They're going to split touches. They're going to split touches. We saw each of them get a goal line opportunity in the preseason, so who knows how that plays out. Passing down work, we really didn't get to see a lot of it, but probably going to give a slight edge to Spears there. But again, both will play in both parts of the game. I just think Spears' ADP is fantastic on CBS. It's after pick 100. Just an easy guy to take. Yes.
All right. Let's take a break. That's an easy thing to take. A break. We'll be right back. We'll talk about Jamey's wide receivers and tight ends. We'll get Heath's list of players that he keeps drafting. We'll talk about the buy-nados that you might need to plan for in fantasy football this year and a lot more. We'll be right back on FFT.
Oh, no! What the heck, bro?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I just got this thing out the shop.
Hold on, let me get my insurance. Hey, FFT?
Yep.
Jamey Eisenberg.
Yeah.
Hey, question for you.
Sure.
What do you think about Jackson Smith and Jigba as a wide receiver 3 in a 12-teamer this year?
Oh, wow. You know, he could actually be really good. He's got to get that role, but if he does, you're going to be really happy about that.
Nice. You know what? Don't even worry about it.
Okay.
Man, we got some. These promos are great. They're just great. Heath, do you have any? Oh no! Oh, why not? We need some Heath Cummings promos. Let's go, guys. Let's go. We need Heath in there.
Heath, do you have a story about someone finding you in an awkward moment, but you're still helping them with their fantasy team?
No.
Oh wow! Really? Really?
Okay.
I'll try to think of one.
Well, we'll make one up and make a promo out of it. Wide receiver
Fantastic.
that Jamey keeps drafting. Drake London is your most rostered wide receiver, and Justin Jefferson. I'm sure. Would you start your team Jefferson London? Be pumped about that.
Would I start? I've done it quite a bit. You know, just because Jefferson's a mid-first round pick, and I tend to take London a few spots before his ADP. Actually, last night in a draft for Michael Fabiano and Sports Illustrated with other analysts, I purposely passed on London and took Chris Olave because those guys tend to go in the same range, and I was like, I got to just diversify a little bit. So I passed on London and took Olave, but yeah, I'm buying in on London. I think the quarterback change, the coordinator change, all these things are going to be very helpful for London, and we finally see the best of him. So a second round pick for me, and again, a guy that I have a lot of shares of.
Yeah, and Matt Ryan, pretty excited about what the Falcons offense is going to do this year. So Chris Godwin, you have on 5 teams. Dave also had him there. Heath, is Chris Godwin making a trifecta? I guess not. Yeah, I don't see him on your list. Chris Godwin.
He's not on my list. I think I've drafted him once, so I haven't avoided him. A lot of times I'm finishing up my starting wide receivers just before we get to that range, it seems like.
Okay. Jamey, you got Puka Nacua on here in 4 leagues. So that's an interesting one. How afraid are you of Puka Nacua and the knee?
I'm not afraid of the knee. I'm afraid of maybe him being hurt just based on his track record. Again, you know, he was lucky to survive the injuries last year, and clearly Cooper Kupp coming back, but I'm not afraid of the knee situation. So he's somebody that I take it, you know, 11 or 12 at the turn, you know, if he's back into round 1, early round 2 type of pick.
Does anybody still have him ahead of Marvin?
No, he's one spot behind for me.
Yeah, me too.
Same, because I had the 12th pick in our pick by pick, and I took Harrison and Barkley. I think Puka was the next pick. Okay. And then let's see who else for Jamey. You've got Malik Neighbors in 3 leagues, Debo Samuel in 4, Debo in 4, Neighbors, Waddle, and Higgins, and Jamison Williams in 3. But you'd have to choose between Waddle, probably have to choose between Samuel, Neighbors, and Waddle, unless you want to take one of them in round 2. So how do you rank those 3?
Samuel, Waddle, Neighbors.
I got to stop saying Samuel. It's just weird. He's Debo. So you go Debo, Waddle, Neighbors.
And I did take Debo and I take Waddle. I took Debo with the Olave draft last night. And I did 2 drafts last night. I'm a little confused.
Someone has here's my future FFT promo from Joe. Adam's at a sandwich shop putting up a stink about them not having cinnamon raisin bagels. Worker about to blow up and realize it's Adam. Hey, you're Adam Azer. Is Neighbors of the Third too aggressive?
It would actually be kind of funny if they recreated your haircut where you wore the shirt with your name on it.
Oh my God, it was so.
And then the punchline is, "Oh, I knew you're Adam because your name was on your shirt."
Yeah, oh, ridiculous. Wait, let's see. Okay, I'm looking for more of these. These are funny. Okay, sorry. Jamison Williams in 3 teams. Jamison Williams, JSN, Jamison Williams, JSN versus the rookies in that range. Worthy, Odunze, Thomas, Coleman. What do you do in that range?
Thomas, JSN, Odunze. I'm sorry, Thomas, Jamison, Odunze, JSN, Worthy, Coleman.
Okay. The ultimate Adam promo would be that no one recognizes him. Jamey, your most drafted tight ends are Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, and Trey McBride. So would you say it's a big priority for you to get a top 5 tight end?
it's just kind of fallen that way. I tend to take a lot of Dalton Kincaid, and so we talked about where Andrews and Kincaid have been going in the recent NFC drafts. In our drafts, he's pretty consistently around 5 pick, and probably mostly because of me. So I do like the upside. I do like the potential. It's hard to say that there's 5 guys that could finish as the number 1 tight end, but if there is a 5th, I think it's him.
Adam's commercial is him drafting his fantasy football team and eating a cookie, then taking a sip of his milk, but there isn't any milk, and his pick is next in the draft. Adam struggles. His draft was an auto pick. Got milk? That's pretty funny.
No one's enjoying these as much as you.
These are great. That's a funny got milk twist. Okay, Heath, let's go to your most drafted players. Oh, Patrick Mahomes, your most drafted quarterback. Very original. Now, question. Is that only in these analyst leagues where he's going in like the 4th round, or would you be willing to take him early in the 3rd?
Well, the funny thing is, like, every other position, I have guys that I've drafted in 7 drafts, 6 drafts, 5 drafts. Mahomes is the only quarterback I've drafted in even 4 drafts, and I've only drafted him in 4. So I'm pretty diversified at quarterback. For the most part, it's just analyst drafts that I've done that. I think I've gone late QB where I've drafted in my home leagues. Most of those are full of Kansas City fans, and so Patrick Mahomes goes a little earlier than I would like to draft him. But I do think it's worth remembering, like, it was 2 years ago that Patrick Mahomes threw for 5,250 yards and 41 touchdowns. His number 1 wide receiver was Juju Smith-Schuster. Yeah. And that's his number 4 now.
And that's why I sit there and I'm like, really, am I really taking Trey McBride ahead of Patrick Mahomes, which happens a lot in our drafts? Am I taking even Travis Kelce or any tight end ahead of Mahomes? Am I taking Devontae Smith ahead of Patrick Mahomes? It feels like we go a little bit too crazy here with where quarterbacks draft. It's probably not a conversation worth having, because in most people's leagues, this is not an option. But it could be something like, am I taking Drake London or Chris Olave over Patrick Mahomes? That's a question that people are going to have to ask themselves. So,
and I am. But I do, like, I have Mahomes basically and Hurts early in round 3 in my rankings. And I think if you're in a normal league, if you can get one of the guys get the 2-3 turn, you're doing well.
All right, you have Jonathan Brooks in 7 leagues. Now, I'm sure a lot of those were before he was put on the PUP list. So how are we feeling about that?
No, I think my last 5 drafts, I've drafted Jonathan Brooks. So pretty much after we knew that he's falling to the round 9-10 range in drafts now. And I have to absolutely love it. I need to have, like, you see Javonte Williams on here, James Cook on here, Tony Pollard's on there as well. I need to have 2 of my top 24 running backs and feel pretty decent about my RB2. But if I do, Brooks is one of my favorite guys to draft. And then it's a free roster spot. Put him in an IR spot and go pick up somebody else.
Okay, let's look at the other running backs that Heath is drafting a lot of.
I like that in one league you put Brooks on IR and added Keaton Mitchell.
Yep, and put him on PUP and add somebody else.
Yep.
There you go. James Cook, Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard. We'll start with that trio. Cook, Williams, Pollard. Would you be happy if your team, if those were your top 2 running backs, a combination of Cook and then one of Williams or Pollard?
Happier with Cook and one of those 2, but a lot of my 0 RB teams have ended up with Javonte and Pollard in the next 2 rounds, and absolutely love that. If I can have 3 wide receivers and a tight end and a quarterback, and then draft Javonte and Pollard, they're getting a little bit more expensive, but still pretty cheap.
And Zamir White is in this group too. He's in 4 of your leagues.
He's this, yeah. And I think I took him in round 9 of our Superflex draft yesterday. Like, it's begrudgingly.
Okay. So
he's
then,
like one of the last settle for running backs on your list, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, he's in that. I think he's right in the DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris group.
Okay, so then you got these 3 kind of late round running backs: Braylon Allen, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Audric Estime. You love those Broncos running backs.
I'm a big 506 opportunities for them last year. Hopefully, it's just 2 guys most of the time this year.
Okay, and Braylon Allen, clear handcuff for Breece Hall.
Yep.
Wide receivers, Heath keeps drafting: Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle. We'll start with that. So, you could definitely take Garrett Wilson in round 1 and pair him with Evans, Higgins, or Waddle. I mean, I'm not sure that Evans and Waddle will definitely make it back to you.
I've taken Evans, Waddle at the 2-3 turn quite a bit. Waddle usually in 2 and Evans in 3. Wilson obviously in 1. Higgins sometimes in 5 or 6.
Wow, at the 2-3 turn. Okay, I was thinking more like the 3-4 turn. Maybe Evans and Waddle could be there. I mean, ADP like Waddle.
ADP Waddle will be and Evans might not. Our drafts, Waddle almost always goes before Evans.
Yeah.
ADP has Waddle 10 spots behind Evans.
36 and 46. Evans 36 and
that's CBS ADP.
Might be one of the best steals you could find. Jalen Waddle at that price.
I would take Waddle at that price for sure.
Yeah, 47th overall.
Yeah.
Let's see where he is. He's 26th overall on NFC, but that makes him.
Yeah, I would be way out on him at 26.
They go crazy for he's wide receiver 17, and he's actually back to back with Mike Evans. So they just go nuts for wide receivers on that site. Anywho, we love T. Higgins. Oh, let's go to how about these guys? Cortland Sutton, Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze.
Yeah, and if I'm thin on wide receiver, I like to have Sutton and one of the rookies because I think Sutton's got that pretty sure wide receiver 3 floor, clear number 1 wide receiver for the Broncos. Worthy or Odunze or Brian Thomas, who didn't quite make the list, have, I think, that second half league winning upside that Sutton doesn't really possess. But I'm not sure you're going to be able to start him the first couple of months of the year.
Sutton, more of a high floor type of wide receiver, like you said, Heath. I don't think he gets close to double-digit touchdowns, but more targets and decent yardage with it. I don't think Bo Nix is a disaster at all. I think he's going to end up being okay for that Denver offense this year.
And
again, another really good value. Sutton's ADP is round 10.
Yeah. And tight end Trey McBride in 7 leagues. It appears to be he and Jonathan Brooks, your most rostered players. Trey McBride and TJ Hawkinson is somewhat. Heath, got to have IR spots if you're playing with Heath. That's for sure.
And I realized, because like my big thing last year was I'm not drafting injured players, and then 2 guys on IR are 2 of my most drafted players, which I don't love. But again, Hawkinson is there a lot of times in round 10, 11, 12. And if you miss out on the top 4, or if it's for you a top 5 or a top 6 tight end, like the guys that you think can be difference makers, you can just pair Hawkinson up with a guy who's not a difference maker. And maybe in the second half, you'll have a top 5 tight end.
Look, it's, being kind of hesitant to draft injured players in the first 2 rounds. Totally get that. You probably would have been right in most of the cases, but there's nothing wrong with it late in the draft, especially when you can stash them in an IR spot. It's really a good use of your late draft picks. Now, we had a question yesterday during the draft-a-thon, and I tried to answer it, but we got so goofy that I couldn't. So I'm going to answer it now because someone asked, he's the same guy, he asked it again. Do you think Ricky Pearsall is going to be fantasy relevant this season? Jamey Eisenberg.
I don't, unfortunately. If anything, late in the year, it just seems like he's so banged up, dealing with shoulder injury. Hopefully he'll be okay, but I mean, you know how teams are in certain cases like this. Like, we don't like Juwan Jennings, but they like Juwan Jennings. So if Ayuk is going to miss some time, it's probably going to be a lot of Juwan Jennings as opposed to Pearsall. Now, who knows by the time, we get to the, latter half of the season, how rookies tend to pick things up and can perform. It's not a bad stash candidate if you have a deep enough roster, but I think you just be aggressive on the waiver wire and pick him up maybe a week or 2 when you start to hear some positive reports.
Okay. So miscellaneous topics here. Let's fire through these. Ready? Dave, talk about the buy-nados in weeks 12 and 14 and if it should have any impact on how you draft.
Absolutely, it should have an impact. You don't want to have too many players on the same bye week unless you're just resigned to losing that week. And if that week is week 14, that's going to be a tough scene for your squad. But there's 6 teams missing on week 14, 6 on week 12. And then in week 6, it's only 4 teams, but it's the Chiefs, it's the Rams, it's the Dolphins, it's the Vikings. There are a lot of pretty good players on those 4 teams. Try and keep an eye on the players' buys once you draft them, especially early on. Try not to double up on as many players. It's almost like the same thing with players on the same team. You want to diversify that a little bit. You don't want to have too many players on the same bye week, especially later on in the season.
It's really amazing if you draft, CJ Stroud and Mark Andrews or something, and week 14 is the last week of your regular season. Because 15, 16, 17 could be your playoffs, and they're both on bye.
It's terrible.
Jonathan Taylor, Mark Andrews, CJ Stroud. You're screwed in week 14.
No, I kind of like it. It's like how much is your team going to look like your team in week 10 even?
Yep.
Like there's such an advantage to not having those guys on bye early in the year. And if you're 8-2 or 9-1,
Wow.
then you can know who cares about week 14. And if you're 5-6, then you can trade those guys to somebody who is 8-2 or 9-1 and have somebody to start those weeks.
I made that decision in in our office league, which is 20 teams. It's weird draft. You have to take running backs and tight ends in the first round, and then wide receivers and quarterbacks in the second round. And I had an early pick in the second round. I was going to take quarterback, and so I don't have very many shares of Jalen Hurts, but they have an early bye week, and in that league, like that could really screw you. So I was like, I'm just going to stick to my rankings. I'm going to take Josh Allen late bye week. Don't worry about it. Exactly your point, Heath. I'll figure out what my situation is by then and be fine, as opposed to maybe needing a win early. Otherwise, you're out of it. By the way, if you play in a TQB league and Taysom Hill's a quarterback, look out. He's our number one.
Yeah, the Saints move up.
The Saints are our number one projected quarterbacks from Sportsline.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, the other thing is by week 14, even week 12, you got to know your league. If it's a casual league, a lot of people are not even making waiver claims, not even picking up. Their team's out of it. They don't care. So if you have players on bye, it's easier to fill the spots because there's less competition in some leagues. The NFL trade deadline is now November 5th, Dave. That's before week 10.
I think it's just great for the league in general because there's going to be more teams that are out of it in the NFL. They're going to be 3-6 or something like that. They don't really have much of a playoff shot. They'll start to turn the page. It could turn into what we see in baseball every year, where the teams that are out of it just have a fire sale, get players off their payroll, and turn the page toward the following season. We might see more of that in the NFL this year. The impact that it has for your fantasy team, you might want to target players who could get moved from those really bad teams because in theory, they'll get traded to really good teams and have prominent roles with them in the event that they do actually get traded. And if not, then they're still good players. They're just not on good teams. Think about Devontae Adams, for example. Let's say the Raiders just have an awful start. They could potentially move on from Devontae. Maybe overpaying for Devontae in a trade could work out for you if he does get traded before the deadline to a contending team.
Okay, and then the last miscellaneous topic here to talk about is when to take a DST and or a kicker. Heath, any thoughts on that?
Usually the last 2 or 3 rounds. There might be an exception in a 10-team league, especially if it's one of those leagues where like there's not very much activity, where you go just a little bit earlier than that to get the best one. But generally the last 2 or 3 rounds.
It's funny because like we don't do any mock drafts in the offseason with kickers or defense, and then we get to some real leagues and then they're there. And especially like if you're drafting with non-analysts, which we're starting to do with our friend leagues, home leagues, how quickly those guys come off the board. It's like eye-opening. Like, wow, that's a defense in round 8.
Yeah.
Let it happen. Don't be worried about it.
But the last 2 or 3 picks, I think is important,
Correct.
right? I don't mind in the third to last and second to last rounds taking my DST and my kicker. Do you guys have a preference of which position to take first?
I think if you're in a league where they start to come off the board first, then you might want to pivot to the other one, just if there's a higher value on that particular player. So I think for like kicker, for example, there's maybe 6 guys that you could say what you're getting, right?
Hopefully. Like every year we have a top 2 or 3 kicker that just like turns to dust. And a guy who we didn't hardly draft who finishes top 3 at the position. So,
but Tucker's really good. Tucker is
really good.
Not just that, but Tucker is an advantage. Every single year he's a top.
No, was it last year or the year before that he was not at all?
All right. Well, almost every year he's had a very long, illustrious career. He's been a really good kicker, and it's probably worth the extra couple points, I don't know, to make him a priority. Dallas's kicker, Aubrey, is incredible. Holy cow.
But again, not drafted in fantasy football last year.
Right, but you could do that with every position, right? There's still
but that's the position where you can count on it. You can set your watch to it every year. So the problem is that if you take your kicker early, let's say it's with your third to last pick before you get a DST, before you throw a dart or add a second quarterback with your last pick, are you kind of committing to that kicker? Because Tucker's the kind of guy that you're going to draft and say, okay, at least I don't have to worry about this position. And you don't with whichever kicker you get until that kicker starts to suck. And then you've got to go and hit the waiver wire. And some people find that to be a nuisance, but other people who are going to make their waiver moves every week, they almost don't care who their kicker is as long as he's on an offense that puts up points.
If you want your league to be more fun, just remove your kicker and add another flex.
Also,
Much
one
more fun.
advantage for Justin Tucker and Kaimi Fairbairn and Matt Gay, who's not quite as good, but he'll get drafted. They have the week 14 bye. So you don't have to worry about that for a really long time. And maybe you can even roster 2 kickers at that point because, like maybe week 14 might not really matter to you, depending on your standings. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about our Superflex mock draft.
That was a fun one.
Oh, man, Heath and I did a Superflex mock draft Tuesday night on a live stream. I had never seen quarterbacks get pushed down the way they were being pushed down. So Thomas has that was a 10-team Superflex league. This was 12, and both of these are real drafts. The Tuesday night one was our podcast leftovers league. 12-team Superflex. We had 5 quarterbacks to start. They were Mahomes, Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and CJ Stroud. And then we had 4 non-quarterbacks. Then Anthony Richardson was QB6. And then another non-quarterback, Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow went at the 1-2 turn. So that's 8 quarterbacks in the first 13 picks. Let me just tell you real quick. This was a 12-team Superflex full PPR league where you also start 3 receivers. So 12-team Superflex is definitely different than 10. Not everyone's going to have 3 quarterbacks they love. And it was, number 3 quarterback might have been a little bit of a priority. I don't remember what I did. I think it was, I took Baker Mayfield in round 7. But let's see, Jamey, you had the second pick. Did you give any consideration after Mahomes went with pick 1? Did you give any consideration to going with McCaffrey? And you did take Josh Allen. Did you give any consideration to McCaffrey?
No.
Okay. So how many quarterbacks do you guys think should go in a 6-point per passing touchdown league before Christian McCaffrey?
4.
That's the number.
4.
Okay. And I'll just say I don't disagree. However, I did in a mock Superflex draft a couple weeks ago, took McCaffrey 3rd overall, and I ended up liking my team just fine. I think my quarterbacks were Caleb Williams. I can't remember. I know Caleb Williams. I think
Caleb Williams, Deshaun Watson was your 3rd, and maybe Geno?
I think Deshaun was my 2nd and Geno was my 3rd.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty loaded roster. So, but you guys say 4. Okay, perfect. How about in a 4-point per passing touchdown league?
I did one of those last night also, and it was before McCaffrey, you're asking?
Yes.
I think it was also 4.
I'd still
But hold on. Somebody actually auto-picked Justin Jefferson 2nd.
Okay. All right. But you wouldn't throw like Anthony Richardson ahead of Christian McCaffrey.
I got Richardson in that draft. I had the 11th pick. I got him the 2nd pick around 2.
Wow. Nice job.
That is really good. All right. So in 5 minutes to sum up our Superflex draft, Heath, what would you say about this draft?
One of my favorite teams that I drafted all year long. Went pretty true 0 RB, didn't take a running back until round 8. I didn't take a 3rd quarterback. I have Jalen Hurts and Geno Smith, and that may come back to burn me, but also Jacoby Brissett's still on the waiver wire. There are going to be starting quarterbacks who pop up. Hopefully I can find them on my bye weeks. But 4 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 quarterbacks before I took a running back. Still ended up with Javonte Williams and Zamir White and Jonathan Brooks, and a couple of Rico Dowdle as well.
I took 4, so I could trade you one.
There we go.
That's another strategy to take 4 quarterbacks.
Well, one is Taysom Hill.
Well, then you did not really take 4 quarterbacks.
If he's QB eligible, then that's 4.
Yeah. But I mean, Taysom Hill is not going to be worth starting at quarterback in a Superflex league.
He is if you're desperate for a quarterback.
He would be in the Superflex play if by the time you may need him, we know exactly what his role is, because we just don't know. But I mean, what if Alvin Kamara's out and he's the running back there?
Yeah, maybe.
So my number 1 flex week 5, because I've got a week 5 quarterback bye as of right now, is either going to be Jonathan Brooks or Marquise Brown. I'd probably just start those guys over Taysom Hill unless something really weird has happened with the Saints.
Okay, Dave, what was your strategy?
I wasn't in this draft, so I didn't
Oh,
have
never
a
mind.
strategy. But I'm noticing that there are 6 teams that took 2 quarterbacks with their first 3 picks, which sort of surprised me. I would have expected more teams to go after quarterbacks early on. And so the team that I'm really looking at is Thomas's team, who didn't take a quarterback until round 6. His first 5 picks: Hill, Chase, Drake London. Arguably the best 3 receivers on the same fantasy team that we've seen in a draft this year. Then he took Pacheco in round 4, Kelsey in round 5. And on the surface, that seems amazing. But hello, it's a Superflex league and you don't have any quarterbacks. He basically went 0 QB. Levis in round 6, Bryce Young in round 8, Justin Fields in round 9, Drake May in round 10. He's going to piecemeal it together with the quarterback position. If one of those guys hits, and it could be Levis, then his team is going to be very, very tough to beat, given all the other star power that he's got everywhere but quarterback. And all he has to do is just find one more quarterback, either via trade or off the waiver wire, or he's got one already on his team and he's off to the races. That's the thinking. That's the strategy of 0 QB, so to speak, in a super flex. I don't particularly love it, but now that I'm seeing a team that's just as loaded as Thomas's team is, I kind of get it. I think it could be really good. And the other thing is, like, I'm looking at round 5. When he was up in round 5, the only quarterbacks that were left that he could have taken over Kelsey were Cousins or Herbert. Would his team be that much better with Cousins or Herbert and Dalton Kincaid instead of Kelsey and Levis? Maybe you feel a little bit safer about that, but I don't think it's got the same type of upside as Kelsey and Levis do.
I love it. I love Superflex. There's just so many different ways you can win. One thing that I learned, and maybe this should have occurred to me, but I do like Dak Prescott better than Tua. We all like Dak Prescott better than Tua. I had the 7th pick. 5 quarterbacks and Christian McCaffrey were off the board. And I tried to diversify the portfolio a little bit because I had Tyreek Hill. I drafted Tyreek Hill a day earlier. I've drafted Breece Hall in a few leagues. So I took CeeDee Lamb. But the best quarterback available to me in round 2 was Dak Prescott. And I don't love that start. Like, it could be amazing.
No, I love that.
You like Dak and Lamb? I would rather I would have preferred like Jaden Daniels.
You are anti-stacking.
But Daniels actually, I thought, okay.
Right?
No, I'm not anti-stacking. And I could have taken Jaden Daniels. In a 1 QB league, I would have taken Daniels over Prescott. 2 QB league, Daniels is a little bit too risky for me, so I did take Dak. So I didn't love Lamb and Dak, but putting the feedback on Twitter, people love that start. So if you're okay with it, Lamb and Dak is like from the middle of round 1 at the 7th pick. It's pretty realistic.
I thought you actually put in the chat during the draft that you didn't like stacking.
I don't hate it, but I don't seek out stacking. I don't want to do it. But you were talking about, I was very emotional at that point because I absolutely hated my team. It ended up being, I got Ken Walker in round 6, which really made me happy and kind of salvaged my team a little bit, but it's fine. My team's fine. My team's good. My team's fine. This is the first time, this thing's the first team I've drafted that doesn't have a top 9 tight end. I have Njoku, but
who's like 10th. Yeah.
So, anyway, just keep that in mind. If you take Lamb and you want Dak or don't want Dak, it's a very strong possibility for you in the 2nd round.
Since it's a smorgasbord show, you have said that top 8 or top 9 tight end thing a lot this year.
Yeah.
Abandoning your great or late roots. Do you think that there's because I see the difference between 4 and everybody else is kind of the cutoff. You think 5 through 9 are closer to 4 than the rest of the guys are to 5 through 9?
I think 5 is.
Like Jake Ferguson or Evan Ingram or those guys in round 8 versus piecing it together with Dalton Schultz and Dallas Goedert late. You think there's a bigger gap between going?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I would love to get a top 4 tight end. I have trouble with it because I love the wide receivers. I love the wide receivers in that range. But I just.
That also comes down to you liking to get your second running back relatively early.
If it's a top 17 guy, yeah. But I just feel like after the top 9, look, obviously there's no way the position's going to play out exactly how I feel it's going to play out. That's just not how fantasy football works. I acknowledge that. After the top 9, I just don't know. I can't think of one guy where he's going to be consistent every single week, and you're never going to think about streaming. You're never going to think about streaming.
they never think about streaming thing. I get. I don't think people should expect the 5 through 9 guys to be consistent every week.
I don't think the 1 through 4 guys are going to be consistent every week. I mean, they're going to have bad weeks too. Everybody has bad weeks, but obviously you're never even thinking about benching them. But it's just a security thing. No, your point is taken. You'd much rather have.
I wasn't making a point. I was asking, like, you've talked about, like, I've talked about the top 4 thing. You've talked about the top 8 or 9 thing. And I was just wondering, like, if you see a big difference between Jake Ferguson, who I think we might average 11 fantasy points per game. And generally we have 20 tight ends that average 9 fantasy points per game. So.
Yeah, I'd see a huge difference between Trey McBride and Jake Ferguson. But when we first did this position preview weeks ago, we kind of said, like, we don't see a tight end averaging more than 15 points per game. I feel like Jamey said that. We don't see a tight end averaging more than 15 points per game this year. Whereas in years we've had Kelsey flirting with 20 and Andrews had that 1 year. So if that is the case, then Ferguson 5 rounds after McBride might make more sense. I will just finish up by saying I would love to get a top 4 tight end in a 2 receiver league. Probably more like a top 9 tight end in a 3 receiver league. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel bad. Like, I feel like I've controlled the tight end narrative here. As I do say it all the time. And I want to make sure everybody else has their own tight end narrative that they've put out there. So if there's anything you'd like to say about tight ends, now's the time.
Make sure you get a top 9 tight end in a 2 receiver league. You want to get one of the top 4 guys in a 3 receiver league. It's okay to go 5 through 9.
I'm sticking with great or late. Sticking to my roots, to Adam's roots or Jamey's roots. He came up with it.
Yeah, right.
Don't reach too big. We see Kelsey's ADP as the 2-3 turn. That's too soon. Don't reach for any of these guys. They're good, but don't go crazy.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much for your time today. We've got FFT Express coming up with the all bust team from Dave Richard. And tomorrow we'll do a thorough average draft position review. And Jacob Gibbs is going to come on to do some rankings disputes with the guys as well. Adios, everybody. Oh, mailbag tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you then.